So I'm just up in Perth today, meeting with the guy Stephen Clarke, who's into his sort of self-exploration, self-discovery, know thyself. And we're going to give him a shot on the Roxiva RX1 and let him see what light does to your mind in regards to deep meditative states and altered states. And if you get a chance to check one of these units out, like, go for it, because you can't really comprehend what light can do to the mind until you have a shot on one of these light machines. There's various different ones on the market, but they're awesome. You know, it just takes you somewhere so quickly. Normally take hours of meditation to get to these deep states, and we get it with the flick of a switch with these devices. So, you know, for your own meditation practice or anything like that, you know, self-exploration, journeying, dream state work, all that sort of stuff, these are gold, man. Anyway, catch you soon. We'll let you know what happens.
So, we've got a wee treat today. We've got some magical devices. Rowan, thank you so much for coming through.
Yeah, no worries at all.
So we've made a point of not talking about this until we press record.
Yep.
So let's chat. What is this magical device?
So this is a Roxiva RX1, and there's a few of these sort of light machines on the market that do sort of brainwave entrainment.
Okay.
And what that does is effectively similar to what you were doing with the drums on the other video the other week, with any sort of rhythm that comes in through the system is going to start to entrain the brain to different frequencies. So with light, because we've got like millions of cables going into our eyes, you get a really powerful result.
Nice.
People are like, light's going to do what to me? And you put them under and they're like, okay.
Yeah.
So is that?
So I'm guessing, I mean, one of the things that I've been studying recently is your third eye. People think that it's this woo-woo concept, but it's actually, it's when you go and actually look into it, you're talking about the pineal gland as a big part of it, and your third eye's actually got light. It's part of your brain. It is literally like a third eye, but it's inside your brain. It's got light sensors in it, like your normal eyes, right? And so I'm guessing that this will target through your eyes.
Well, yeah, I mean, what it does is through closed eyes, the light goes in and effectively hits the retina, and then the retina will sort of almost convert the photons that are hitting it into electrical energy. So like with all your other sensory information, it's your own nervous system energy that's being used, whereas with the eyes, it's actually new energy going in. So that goes into the visual cortex and then radiates out through the whole brain. So it sort of activates this internal space, and it can't really be fully described unless you experience it, but like you'll probably get a pretty good job afterwards.
So we're going to do a very short intro right now, and then we'll talk more about when I've actually experienced it.
Yeah.
So what do you think we should start with then?
I think the little sort of 10-minute Roxy demo program is probably a pretty good place to start, and then we can do a slightly longer one after that once you've sort of been introduced to the light, shall we say. I don't want to give you too many suggestions as to what you might experience in this.
Yeah.
Just so that there's no sort of hypnotic suggestions going on here or anything.
Absolutely.
Like it's a trained hypnotist.
So just in case you haven't seen the other video I did a video about drumming, because I've experienced drumming when somebody else has been drumming, and it resonates. It's got this beat, this rhythm to it, but you can actually, when they come close to you with an actual drum, you can feel that vibration, but it's more to the point, it's that rhythmic drumming that then speaks to and gets you into a trance state, allows you to get into a trance state much, much quicker. And from what you're saying, light can just do that a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
Let's get into this.
Go.
I think if I had one of those, I'd just use it every day.
I do.
Wow. That was, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
It's
not really something you can describe before you go under it.
No. Yeah, I mean, the combination of the lights and the music, I found myself, this is the way I am, so I found myself, there's certain periods of it that it was like really bright and colourful. Like,
I actually turned it down about halfway through because it looked like it was maybe a bit too bright.
All right, no, I really like this. It's like,
or we can crank it back up to the next program.
Yeah, it was just like, like these bright colours. You know, like, and when it started doing that, I could feel myself just like almost going into the trance. I could just feel myself, and then it'd go back to like almost like a strobe, but with movement, and it's just
So it's just white light.
Oh, is it?
All that colour is your mind.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh man, because I was going to ask you, I was like, can we make it more colourful? Because I like that bit.
It's just your brain, man.
Is it really? Wow.
So yeah, I mean, I had a chap on under it the other day under that same program, and he was just seeing like visuals of paintings, like really intricate paintings.
Really?
When he was under it, yeah. So I don't know if you got any sort of dream images, or if it's all just fractals of colour.
Just fractals of colours in that way. So it's probably worth saying my journey for the past 3 years has been trying to switch my mind off. Like I'm constantly just trying to understand the world. Very analytical thinking. That's how my whole life is, analytical thinking, seeing the future. So a big part of my journey for the past 3 years has been trying to allow that part to switch off, allow it to relax a little bit, so that I can get more creative and drop more into the creative zone,
flow states.
Yeah,
the analytical mind. Have you experienced the gap when you've been meditating? So there's a point where it's like everything falls away, and there's just space, and you lose your body sensations. You lose.
Yeah, I call it the void.
Yeah, the void, the gap.
Yeah.
Various different words for it, but that's sort of. It's something that I've been working towards for quite a while, and I'm very analytical as well, and always have been, sort of just pulling things apart and putting them back together. But I find it's extremely interesting to sort of create these cross associations in my mind, which is something that analytical mind does. And we get taught that the conscious mind is the analytical mind. But how many times have you gone to sleep with a problem and woken up with a solution? It was the conscious mind that was analysing that data. So there's an element of analysis goes on in the unconscious as well. So I think, one of the things that really changed things for me was working with these. I bought my first one back in 2015, and I bought it at the same sort of time as I bought my house. And doing that with a regular meditation practice just supercharges the meditation. So it's really powerful for that. I wrote a little program to do mantra meditation with. And I was going through it, and I started realizing that instead of the mantra being pushed out by thoughts, there was thoughts on top of the mantra.
Okay.
And then I started using the mantra with the breath, and then I started getting thoughts on top of that, and then the mantra, the breath, and the heartbeat, and then thoughts on top of that. And the only way I can sort of describe this is it's like we have this 7-core plus or minus 3 processor in our mind. And it's normally not even very good at running on 1 core. And with meditation, we can open it up so we can run all 7 cores. Yeah. Because
I have to say, I found this as well. So like the idea of having like a mantra or focusing on your breath is so that you can, it's giving your mind something to do so that you don't think too much.
Yeah.
But I found myself a mantra, I'm focusing on my breath, but I'm still thinking on top of saying this mantra in my head and breathing. Absolutely. I feel that.
Yeah, I developed a system. I'm not sure if I came across it somewhere else or if I've actually developed it myself, but working with the light, I would do these different stages. So it starts off with the mantra, and then starts the mantra with the breath, with the heart, then the mantra said in the heart, with the breath and the heart. So you've got a location there as well. So that's 4. And then you add in love and gratitude for yourself. That's 5. And then love and gratitude for everything else in the universe. And that brings you up to 6. So at that point, you've got basically 6 points of awareness that you're keeping track of. And there's no space for the voice to come in on top of that, really. So that was a really powerful. And I went through that from start to the point where I'm doing all 6 in a month using this light.
Wow.
So it was pretty fast tracked. Yeah. And I sort of look at it like, with that program there, that's a very psychedelic program. Whereas you can do more sort of fixed entrainment programs where you're just putting in things like theta or delta frequencies or gamma frequencies or harmonically tuned programs and things like that. And you get a lot less of the psychedelics, if any psychedelics at all. And it's more just taking you to a really deep state. And with that sort of program, you're effectively, like when you're learning to meditate, you don't really know what you're trying to do. And this allows your brain to feel what it's like to be in that really powerful focus state.
Yeah.
So I don't know if when you were under there, if you were having many thoughts, or did you notice them going down and just being more immersed in
a little bit. I come in and out of thought, and I could see like it was a very short round, like for 10 minutes, but even in that space, I was instantly going, oh, this is really interesting. Instantly, I was like, that's interesting. Well, there's a thought. But then you go in and relax and just be, and that's what essentially what I try to do when I'm meditating. It's like just be, and it starts with that thought of just be, Stephen, just be, just be. But then once I've given myself that thought, then you can start to relax into it and then just be in that state. But then those thoughts come back in again because it's a new experience as well. Yeah. You know, you can see if you do that on a regular basis, you would, or for a little bit longer, because towards the end you're more relaxed. Yeah. To start with, I was like, oh, this is fucking cool.
It's interesting that the people that seem to have this sort of almost ADHD type mentality. With these sort of more gamma type programs, because the gamma frequencies quite often wake people up. Whereas with myself and other people I know that I've got more of that sort of like moving monkey mind going on, these things tend to knock them out.
Right, okay.
So if I need to go to sleep at night, I'll chuck that program on it and just put it on repeat a couple of times, because you can set it up to repeat like however many times you want in the settings. So I just stick it on to repeat 3 times, and that's like.
Oh, really? Or you just set it above your bed?
Yeah. So you get some pretty cool dream states after doing these things as well.
Yeah, amazing. So at this point, I think it's probably worth just talking a little bit about you and what is it that you do? Because you're not just a light man.
No, I mean, my story is really dealing with my own anxieties, and I had really, really bad social anxiety, like super crippling shyness when I was a kid. And so when I moved to Edinburgh, it was so bad it took me 8.5 months to get further than the shop underneath our house. And I've worked on myself, and I'm on spectrum autistic, so I've got a few synesthesias, like I feel sounds and things like that. So a lot of sensory information comes into my brain that would normally be filtered out by a regular neurotypical mind. So it's been quite difficult for me sometimes in social situations just because of that amount of data. So I've spent the best part of the last 20 years learning hypnosis, NLP, EFT, all these sort of different modalities, energy healing. I do Reiki, I do yoga, these sort of things to try and overcome my own issues and also to help other people. And going through that, I remembered that when I was asked, when I was a little kid, what I wanted to do with my life was help other people. So that's what I do now. So I'm
he's in the right place, eh?
Yeah. I'm mainly a hypnotist, but I do this light therapy stuff. So, and also photographer. I play about doing the photos, and that keeps me out of mischief at night.
Yeah. There's absolutely lots of parallels with my life. Quite shy as a kid, really learning about, looking after myself to bring up my own confidence first and foremost, learning about my mind, learning about, the ins and outs of personal development. And then you go down a route of, okay, well, what else is there? I'm heavily into breath work. I love breath work. Breath work. I like yoga, but not a huge amount. I'm not going to practice it on a regular basis, but I do like it. I see the benefits in some yoga. But then I'm fascinated with like energy healing, and that's essentially the next phase of my development is going down that route of, okay, well, how can I take this a little bit further?
Cool. I sort of trained in Nice. It was the year after my father passed away. I went off to Nice and did the precursor to hypnosis, which is magnetism. And a lot of the hypnotists out there will say, it's not really anything, it's just suggestion. But if you put your hand over your other hand and do that, you can feel the heat. Right? Yeah. So there's definitely something there that our central nervous system can feel. And there's an electromagnetic field and things like that as well. So if you're in like a bar or a noisy cafe or anything like that, and someone leans in and starts to whisper a secret, your focus goes like, and everything disappears. And you go into that monoideistic, single-pointed focus state, which is effectively a hypnotic state. And if you've agreed to do energy healing or anything like that, the central nervous system is listening for that whisper. So it creates this focus state within the central nervous system, within the unconscious mind. And that molecular mind that you were working with the swan.
Yeah, swan meditation. Yeah.
So the swan technique is speaking with that sort of muscle movements and things like that. And when you're dealing with that part of the mind, you're dealing with the parts of the mind that developed before we developed language. So it's a really sort of primal part of the mind-body system. And I think that there's definitely something in that. And I don't know how much you've gone into sort of trance states with hypnosis or guided meditations and things like that.
Yeah, a little bit.
Do you notice the sort of phosphenes, the moving patterns behind your closed eyes?
Yeah.
So I noticed this when I was doing hypnotic inductions. I would get sort of waves coming in from one side and then the other side.
I don't know if that's a normal thing or not, but that's certainly, please drop in the comments. When you close your eyes, do you see these moving patterns? I always have.
It's something that seems to happen as we start to go into hypnagogia, into that sort of edge of dream state. But with magnetic healing or Reiki or any of these energy modalities, you seem to get more of a sort of balanced concentric circle going in. Mm-hmm. And when I'm just meditating and doing that sort of stuff, I get this circular sort of, it's almost like I don't know if you've seen the sun disk. Like there's a glyph for the sun, which is like a circle with a point in the center. It's the old Egyptian hieroglyph for the sun. And it's almost like that sort of one circle goes into a point and then the next circle appears and you get this concentric wave.
And it just keeps going.
It just keeps going, yeah. So you can just sit and gaze at that. And that's actually one of the oldest forms of meditation. So there's a technique called hakalau in the Hawaiian system that allows you to just access that instantly. And energy healing seems to do that as well. So I think it's maybe creating a sort of a trance state that doesn't have the dominance because of the language center in one hemisphere. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a slightly more balanced trance that you get from doing these energy healing things. Yeah, fascinated by all that.
I think it's worth mentioning at this point as well that you may be thinking, well why? What's the point? Right. So a lot of people say, well, what's the point? Why do I do this? And a lot of people, from my background, would say, oh, it's a bit woo-woo. Right, it's a bit woo-woo, like trance states and energy healing and having these energy fields. Like, but why? And from my point of view, I would say because we're constantly experiencing altered states of consciousness. Yes. Consciousness is this word, are you conscious or not? Well, actually, there's so many different avenues of consciousness, like what you're saying about somebody comes and whispers in your ear. Suddenly you go, shoo. And I think all your senses, even your sight almost gets a little bit blurred. You stare at a point just so you can hear a little bit more and you're just focusing. The consciousness is going shoo, to hear. Now, for me and what I do for a living, it's helping people to be the best self, really live fully. What does that mean? Well, when you've got this altered state of consciousness, and once you can understand your own consciousness and where it's been drawn into different areas of your life, you can then do something about it. Yep. If you see this constant pattern arising of, maybe you're overweight and you're eating all the wrong food and you're not exercising, and it's because you're highly stressed and you know what you should be doing, but you're so stressed that you just want to eat food that's going to make you feel a bit better, and you can't be arsed exercising because you've got no energy. And you go, okay, well, there's a pattern that comes before all that. Yeah. Okay, and when you start to access your energy and your consciousness, you can then start to recognize these patterns and go, actually, it was my reaction to this thing that caused this thing that caused that thing, and actually I can then start to choose something different. Yeah. So when it comes to something like this and hypnotherapy and what you do for a living, somebody's saying, look, it's fascinating, right? So my little experience, 10 minutes, first experience, it was fascinating. Yeah. It was like multicolours. And I'm going to ask the question that hopefully everybody's asking right now. So that's great, but why?
What it does is it brings you to a state of presence. So a lot of what we do, when we're little children, we're in a state of presence and play in the world, and we're learning new things all the time. And there's a point where we start to be able to think about other stuff because we've put things into these patterns, as you say. So we start to go through the different levels of learning. And there's a point where, if anyone's been learning to drive, there's various different muscle movements, like moving your legs, moving your hands and things like that. But there's a point where the unconscious sort of puts it all together like that, and it creates a program called driving and attaches all of this information about the rules of the road and things like that. So it's the unconscious mind that actually does these learnings and creates these patterns of behavior. And as we get older, time slows down and time speeds up. Like we get older and time just seems to disappear. When we were kids, it was like years for the summer holidays. Now it's like a year's gone in a second. And why is that? it's because we're daydreaming about what we've done yesterday or what we're doing tomorrow. And we're allowing these patterns to run our life for us. So the more we can be present in the moment, the more we can start to be in control of how we're reacting. And this is very much what you were talking about there. We have all these different states, and we can think of a state being a different name for a trance. They're the same thing. It's just different language. Mm-hmm. And each of these states has all of the learning that's attached to that state. And it has a different version of your persona attached to the front of it. So it's like sort of pigeonholes of memory, and each different state has all the access to memories. But you can be present when you're angry. You can be present when you're sad. So this present state, which is another state, can be held alongside all of these other states. It starts to reintegrate the mind for you. So the more you can be present and look at these patterns and decide whether you want to carry on with this pattern or whether you want to change something, the more you're living in a place where you're observing this part of the mind that writes the story for you and puts these patterns together. And you start to be aware of the patterns and where they come from. So instead of just being triggered into anxiety, you'll start to be triggered into remembering a memory from childhood or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's taking you to that initial sensitizing event that we look for in regression therapy and stuff like that to actually change the beliefs. So then we've got a place to work, and we know that it's no longer just a pattern, it's a pattern because of this. Yeah. And we can then sort of destroy the pattern if we want and write something new.
Amazing.
So this takes us there.
So this what you're explaining there is what happened when I essentially unconsciously made the decision to stop drinking alcohol. Was that alcohol was always part of my identity. It's just like, yeah, Stephen likes whiskey. I'm a Scottish guy who likes whiskey. Of course he does. And that just, it made sense to me for my whole life. I was like, yeah, I just drink. And I used to make it part of my identity. I used to make videos for social media about drinking alcohol, and it's okay, health and happiness and everything else. And I became present. I became conscious of certain behaviors, and I was just like that in the moment, I was like, oh, holy shit, actually, these parts of my life that I'm hiding away, that I'm shameful about, I'm guilty about, I'm kind of not happy with, are all a result of me drinking alcohol. But when you put the alcohol as part of your identity, it's like, well, that's just me. And you just accept these other aspects of your life because alcohol is part of my identity. And suddenly you say, well, actually, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. So you start becoming more conscious of it in the moment. And you recognize that pattern of leading up to, well, it's a Friday night, I've had a whole week of work, and I'm reaching for the bottle of whiskey or a glass of wine or whatever it might be. And you recognize it a little bit sooner because you're present, because you're conscious, and you go, actually, I know it's going to lead down this path of me not being present with my children and with my wife and afterwards.
Written over the door, the temple of Zeus, isn't it? Know thyself. And that's what this is all about, isn't it? It's about being aware of yourself and starting to get to know yourself to a deeper level. And deciding whether you want to carry on with those patterns or not. So it gives you a little bit of control. Makes you a better man at the end of the day.
That's what we're all here for, right? We're here to be a better man.
Best we can be, anyway.
Michael Jackson said the best, start with the man in the mirror, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think, just on this, one of the things that I teach is memory. And this is a really sort of important aspect of all of this, because with memory and natural memory training, so there's a part of the mind called the central executive that we're hacking when we're doing memory palace work and stuff like that. And we're stepping into this visuospatial sketchpad and attaching cards to objects and things like that. But when we do the natural memory training, there's a particular technique in there that we can actually install a pattern of presence in the unconscious mind. So instead of having to try and be present all day, every day, we can start to actually open that up. So it's just a default pattern that we're already running. And stuff like this really helps sort of embed those patterns within our mind as well. So we can create beneficial patterns. We don't want to just get rid of all the patterns. Well, they're useful.
and then I think that's probably a really important point to make is, if I said to you right now, don't think about elephants, that's the first thing that pops into your mind. So if you're constantly like, I need to stop doing these things and break these patterns, the best way to break any pattern is to create a new one.
There's a really good technique from the HUNA system called positive programming for this. And it's not like positive mental attitude, but you just go through your day all day for a couple of weeks, talking to yourself in your head going, I just successfully made a cup of tea. I just successfully crashed my car. I just successfully and it does that. Like as soon as we say, I just successfully ... it pulls us into observer and makes us present of what we've just done. So instead, it allows you to laugh at it now instead of in 6 months or 6 years down the road, you know. So that was one of the ways that I switched off the negative voice in my head, was by using that positive programming technique. So it's one to give it a try.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really nice place to end this video with a little positive affirmation task, because not everyone's going to have access to a light. No. So if you're at home thinking, what can I do? Then run a program. Yeah. We're always running programs, so run a new program. And I'm going to try that one. You know, I successfully just made a YouTube video.
Bit deeper in that one?
Oh, yeah. That was different. Right at the end, really strange, this image of a Native American Indian. So
you're getting proper dreams.
Yeah. Which, and I knew it was coming to the end as well. As the music was starting to fade, and it was just like, and as the music was fading, this the Native American just faded away. So I was like, no, come back, come back.
It's interesting, the stuff that comes up in some of these, because it is very much like a psychedelic experience. You know, one of the things with sort of the entheogens, especially things like psilocybin, are they allow the whole brain to fire together. And that's basically what this is doing. It's going into your visual cortex and then echoing out through your whole brain. So there's new energy. Basically with your eyes, you know, as I said before, there's like millions of cables going in, and the photons get converted into energy. So it's bathing the whole neurology with new energy. So there's research into strobing light therapy for things like Alzheimer's to break down brain plaques. There was a study done in, I think it was Melbourne University, where they were doing a study with rats and mice with Alzheimer's and giving them 40 hertz light, 1 millisecond burst for an hour a day for 7 days, and they cleared 65% of hard and soft plaques from their brains. Wow. And the latest research into Alzheimer's is showing that we've got a lymphatic system that's effectively pumped by the diaphragm. And there's a glymphatic system, which is the cerebrospinal fluid flushing brain plaques from the brain. So every time we have a thought, our brain's effectively creating little bits of plaque on all the synapse. And then at night, when we're in deep sleep cycles, these get cleared. Or if we're in deep meditation cycles, so these sort of things start to get cleared. So this is one of the benefits of this. It's not only light can potentially break down those plaques, but also we can artificially induce really, really deep states using the light. So there's a chap in France that was using one of my programs that basically takes you down to half a hertz epsilon. And he was doing a day and a half recovery after his endurance cycling, and he got it down to an hour and a half using one of these lights. So, you know, for rest and recovery and regeneration, they're pretty cool as well. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's worth talking about, you know, this plaque that builds up. You know, I think it's called myelin. Is it myelin? Something like that. If we're talking about the same thing, that is. But essentially, this is how we create habits. Now, that can be a good thing if you're developing a skill of some kind. If you're developing, that's obviously, we want to create a certain pathway in our brains to create a habit, like driving, for example. You know, like we mentioned driving. So a certain amount of that is we want, but for the best part, it narrows your life. And essentially, this creates what we know as our identity and how we go about our day-to-day life. Now, if your life is absolutely incredible right now, then you might want to try it to experience something new and to maybe be a bit more creative with your life. But
for the best part of this world is in a place where more people need to be opening their minds up a little bit more and creating a new life, new identities for ourselves, for our species. This world is going through a huge change right now, which is beautiful to see. More and more people are waking up and going, actually, there's more to life than this fear and insecurity and drama of the world. But that could be sped up a little bit with people open their minds and become more connected again. You can open your mind, open your heart.
I think there's an element of this sort of separation of the two sides with social media, because what you like, you get more of. So it sort of creates this divide. And because that's happened so quickly over the last 10, 15 years with social media, people are noticing it and they're going, wait a second, something's not right here. So the more we can do to sort of look at how our mind's working and open up that neuroplasticity again. And it's been shown that we can have the same neuroplasticity in our 90s as we have in our teens, if we use our mind that way. And with things like Alzheimer's and dementia, if you play people music from their youth, they'll still have the memories there. So it's not really a problem with memories. It's a problem with the attention and association part of the brain that forms new memories. Because it's that part really that starts to connect what we're experiencing now through the senses with the information that's already in our mind. It's all of the different collaborative encoding and collective encoding and these sort of systems that starts to put all that together. So the more we can sort of open that up and start to become aware of what's around us and associate new things, the more we can open up those circuits.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a whole world out there at our disposal, a whole universe. What we see as the world is only our belief about what the world is, and your world is completely different to my world. And sometimes it crosses over and we go, all right, good, we share this little part of our world together. But you see the world in a very unique way. I see the world in a very unique way. And everybody watching sees the world in a very unique way. And when we come together to create a new world with new belief systems, we can create an absolutely incredible world. But we need little things like this, and it's not going to be accessible to everybody, but the little, things like meditation and getting in nature and drumming, and if you can get therapy, hypnotherapy, psychotherapy, whatever, to open up your mind and open up your belief systems about what's possible for you as an individual. I mean, I'm talking about creating a more beautiful world, and that's really important. But actually, that happens by each individual creating a more beautiful world for themselves. Create a new beautiful world for yourself, and then connect with other people, and together we collectively change the world.
I mean, with these, we've got a number of them in Edinburgh. I've been doing little events where you get to come along and do taster sessions and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, nice.
Even if you can't afford one of the lights yourself and can't afford a session with it, then you can
come along for these events. Yeah, happy days. Are they on a regular basis?
We're hopefully going to be putting them on every month or every couple of months in Edinburgh. I'm just doing some work with the Psychedelic Society there to maybe set up a regular event for them.
Oh, happy days.
So that'll be an interesting one.
I'll be there.
Cool.
I will be there. If anybody is close to Edinburgh, I want to come on to one of these events, then get in touch with Rowan.
Yep.
I will likely be at some of these events because I think it sounds pretty awesome, and I'd like to experience that on a regular basis. So,
also with things like energy healing and hypnosis, you can use this as an induction form to hold you in that deeper state while you're doing work as well.
Oh, wow.
So, that sort of stuff might be interesting.
I've got some friends who are in Edinburgh who might be actually interested in that. I've got a few people who are into energy healing and psychotherapy.
Cool. Excellent.
Thank you so much, Rowan. Pleasure having you. Please check out Rowan, rowanramsey.com.
.co.uk. .com's my photography stuff as well, so you can check that
great.
if you want.
Photography stuff. I've actually seen some of these photos. They're pretty cool. Some light effects and stuff. Yeah, awesome.
Excellent.